But, there's always those tentacles that are always reach, and you always have that mentality to fall back on those things. I go down the Cal U. I think my first day down there, I run to my car to go grab a gun. I have guys had to come cut, because in my brain as a 20-some-year-old man, 21-year-old man, you just solve everything with a gun. This guy wants to kick us out of his house. It's fine. I'm just going to go kill him. God really used us doing that, and I watched adults walk an aisle while I'm preaching to little kids. I mean, I'm giving silly little Bible stories and watching gangsters walk the aisle and get saved, and I just knew that's what God wanted me to do.
So I just got done editing the interview with Phil, and I don't mind the chicks chirping over here. I gotta keep them until they go to the coop, and that's the only place I can keep them. But a little bit of background, I got to know Phil for about 15 years, and in that 15 years, I've heard stories here and there of his life before he was saved. And now he didn't go into any details of his life, especially him living in the, being a part of the streets and all the that comes with it, shootings, stabbings, drugs, and so on. He did not go into that type of detail, and for obvious reasons. I don't think he wants to relive it, and also he doesn't want to glorify sin, and I think that's wise on his part. He has some wisdom that preachers had 200 years ago. Namely, I was reading this book by Charles Spurgeon, and this is what he says, and I think this is really defines what Phil was trying to do. He says here, "Brethren, far be it from us to utter a syllable which would suggest an impure thought or raise a questionable memory. We need the Spirit of God to put bit and bridle upon us to keep us from saying that which would take the minds of our hearers away from Christ and eternal realities, and set them thinking upon the groveling things of earth." And I think that's what Phil really did. He didn't want our minds to go through to that, to the groveling things of earth. It's best that we keep our minds on Christ, and I think he was wise about that. Just remember what change God did in his life. I got to at least see the saved side of him, and hearing the stories, I can see the transformation, the great change in his life. And I think there's an overall theme that happened in this interview, which was, I think, by accident on at least our part. But you'll notice that anyone that wants to change, they cannot do it from the outside. It has to start inside with the Lord. He's the only one that can bring about change, true change in someone's life. No matter how badly they want it, cleaning up their life, starting a new life over, moving, whatever it may be, looking different, nothing will change until they get saved. And God comes and lives inside their heart, the Holy Spirit. And that you'll see this kind of message through the interview. And I hope you enjoy. I hope you stick through it. But let's get started.
Well, my folks grew up in southwestern PA, and had me, and my dad got a job at Kodak up in upstate New York, and so we, at a young age, my brother and I were in New York, moved back to Pennsylvania. Years later, elementary school age, did all my elementary school age in the southwestern PA area. It was life. It's, just normal working class life. My dad had health issues, worked a lot. My dad didn't have a dad real involved in his life growing up, and he was busy and, has all kind of health issues and things. And so I was wild to begin with and a little bit squirrely. And so that relationship really wasn't there. And so, childhood's what it is, what the childhood of the world is. Sometimes it's just rough, and you bump your head and you make mistakes. And my mom and dad tried to do the best they could to do right. And my mom did. She got pregnant with me. She grew up right after the hippie era, and she decided there was not going to be drugs and alcohol in the home. And she really meant that, and she tried that. And unfortunately, as they do in Pennsylvania, they have backyard parties and things in the summer. And an uncle came over when I was just a young man and introduced me to alcohol. It started a path down my life. I've traveled for 13 years now, and you meet people all the time. And a lot of times people that grow up in church and have never done drugs, they don't understand why people do it. And the reason people do drugs is because it feels good. It's an escape for a little bit of time. And as a child, I was introduced to something that would help me escape, not being able to understand my life and situations of life. And not that I was a full-blown alcoholic at 9, 10 years old, but I had a passion for it. It had helped me. And of course, going to public school and things like that, you're introduced to that, not having a relationship at home with a mom and dad. You find yourselves in places you shouldn't be. And I found myself in a lot of places I shouldn't be, and running the streets and getting involved with people I shouldn't be. And it led to some dark places as a young man. And teen years led me to selling drugs and doing drugs and partying and the music industry and the streets and gangs and all that the world has to offer. I looked for peace in all those places and just couldn't find it.
How did you get involved with selling drugs? Like, what was the story behind that?
I think it's just a natural part of when you grow up and you come from a family that has struggles. It's low, you grow up low income, and then you come from a messed up home, and you go to an elementary school where people have normal family dynamics. There's a mom and dad in the home. They do things together, and we moved from the inner city to a rural area, and it was difficult. It was hard for me to deal with that and understand those things, and so drugs became an escape, and it became not only a way of feeling good. It was a way of having power and influence, and knowing those things and being around those things in the public school system, and having people that I knew that were older than me. I played a lot of sports. As I got older, it helped keep me from getting arrested as much. So I ran track for a lot. I ran long distance and football and karate, and neighbor up the hill, up around the block. We grew up playing basketball together and doing things, just trying to distract my flesh. No real solutions, no real biblical solutions, but just literally wearing my flesh out. It's just sad. And when you live that way, you look for ways to fit in. You don't fit in, with the elementary school crowd. So you find ways to be funny and find a way to be street smart and survive that situation. And it leads you to meet people that will take advantage of you. And unfortunately, you meet people that are older than you, that have the car, they have the girls, they have the money, they have the influence. And it used to be a bygone era where young men were recruited from the streets. We're looking for family. We're looking for that older sibling. We're looking for love in all the wrong places. Just someone to make us feel like we're important and we belong. Almost like a mentor, like a father figure. Mm-hmm. And I got wrapped up into that.
When did that happen?
As a young man, about 12 years old, 12, 13 years old.
And how long did that life or that kind of go on for?
You live a triple life, unfortunately, like a lot of Christian young people do. I want to play sports, so I have to maintain a C average. I'm in public school, so I gotta show up for school, and I don't want to get expelled, and I don't want arrested at school. So there's certain things I'm not going to do there. And then so you have these friends at school, and you have these friends after school, and you have these weekend people, and so you live all these different lives. You try to balance it and juggle it, and it's difficult, and it wears on you, and you see a lot of death and destruction. And I would say, I got out of high school. And my mom, she really wanted me to go to college. She pushed education real hard. She thought, that was going to be the solution for me, was just get me off to college, and that degree was going to, and not everyone dies in the streets. Not everyone ends up in jail their whole life. And some people just get away, and you just get sick of it, and it eats your guts away. And, you start to try to physically separate yourself. You move, and you try to change friends, and you try to change locations. And those things always start to catch back up to you. But I guess officially say a dropout at probably 20 years old. I went away to college, and that stuff follows you. You have obligations. Sin comes with obligations. It just does. when I was a member at the bar clubs in town, I had an obligation to be there. The guys, where you been? You haven't been out drinking. The sin comes with obligations, and the streets come with obligations, and you can't always, you can't escape them real easy. But you get sick of the things that you see, and it messes you up as a young man. It messes all things that a young man shouldn't see. And you try to stay away from it. And thankfully, Mom tried to get me college and things like that. But so I would say a good 9 years of off and on, really, really troublesome. I'm trying to be careful of how I word and what I say, because I don't want to glorify sin, honestly. And just a lot of really debauchery and wickedness. Just street life.
Pretty much all your teenage life, you were then in the streets, wrapped up in drugs and alcohol and so on. And then I guess some people would say turning over a new leaf around 20 years old then.
Yeah. Tried to run away and switch colleges, getting in trouble with Penn State and switch colleges. And then, of course, your sin follows you. You can change your environment, but if you don't have a change on the inside, it doesn't matter. And of course, in my 20s, I eventually, of course, I met Casey, but I tried to get away from things and tried to, I'm just going to hang out with my high school friends, or I'm just going to hang out with these college guys, and I'm not going to go back to it. But, there's always those tentacles that are always reach, and you always have that mentality to fall back on those things. I go down the Cal U, I think my first day down there, I run to my car to go grab a gun. I have guys had to come cut, because in my brain as a 20-some-year-old man, 21-year-old man, you just solve everything with a gun. This guy wants to kick us out of this house. It's fine. I'm just going to go kill him. It's fine. We'll just take care of this right now. We'll just solve it. And it just that mentality of like almost brainless. Like now I can't even think. Like it's hard for me to even think that way. Like I don't even know how does my brain come to that like decision. Like I say it now, it sounds stupid. Like stupid. It's like super stupid. But I'm like, it was serious. Like to me, it made logical sense. That made logical sense. It's you disrespect me. We're going to take care of this right now. I'm going to end this. And that's going to be the end of it. And then everyone here is going to know it's never going to happen again. It's just stupid life. And that stuff follows you into everything that you do in life. It chases you.
Is there any stories, not I guess, completely sin related that you would like to share during those teenage years, something that you can go back to?
No, we had a lot of good time. I had a lot of good, solid, like school friends. They weren't all Christian, but I did have friends that we had good times together that weren't just debauchery and partying. And unfortunately, I was the guy a lot of times that brought that stuff. I was the guy as a teenager. My mom really wanted drugs and alcohol and all that stuff. She did not want that involved in her children's life. When she got pregnant with me in 1980, she just did not want that in her home. She didn't want it around her. And I'm ashamed as a teenager. I brought that into my home. I'm the one that brought those things into my parents' home. Reintroduced them. And as kids, we don't realize the impact we have on our family. As teenagers, you don't realize that. As a lost man, I had no idea. I had no idea what I was doing to my parents that needed the Lord too. And you just don't know. You just bump your head. You're just lost. You're just gripping in darkness. But there was a lot of really good times of just silliness and I had a lot of good friends in school. I like to joke a lot and have fun. I played football like 12 years, but I say I played football. I after elementary school, it got so serious. I just had more fun clowning around and being with the guys. It was a place I could escape, and man, that was good times just hanging out with the guys and loosen the water bottle a little bit, man, and watching some of them upperclassmen, man, they get a kick out of that, and we pick on each other and just we had a lot of good time. It's things that obviously it was. I'm sure there's a lot of sin involved in it, but it wasn't overtly, debaucherous lifestyle. Super sinful stuff. And we had a lot of fun doing those kind of things. Paintball in the yard and all that kind of stuff. And they were getting all the kids together. And a lot of good stuff like that as kids growing up.
So you're around your 20s. When do you meet Casey? She's kind of like the key to you getting saved ultimately.
So I came home. I don't know what year it was. I think I was still at Penn State, and I came home, and I needed to make some money. And obviously, when you change locations, try to be really careful. You don't always have the same connections you do when you move locations. You know, when Moses moved away from Egypt for 40 years, his connections changed. You know, he was raised in Pharaoh's home the first 40 years of his life. He murdered them. You know, 2 soldier boys went away for 40 years working on the, you know, out in the field, and came back, and his influence was gone. Well, that, you know, you and I live that way. We live with very little influence in life. And so I came home for the summer, so obviously I have to make money and survive. I want to be able to do the bad things I'm doing as a lost man. And so I moved from school to back home, and so I'm get a job. And so I thought, well, I need somewhere easy to work. And someone said, man, you can get a job on the turnpike real easy, man. You know, and it's pretty easy. They'll just throw you in the basement or something, man. You work there, and they'll, you know, it's just easy money to do what you need to do on the weekends and have fun until you get back to school and you can make real money again. I thought, okay, let's do it. So I get a job working on the turnpike. You know, I got a job at McDonald's. They hired me right there on the spot. You know, they're crazy. Just young people working on the turnpike. Well, Casey, she worked at a restaurant that was in the same, you know, terminal thing, you know, the truck stop area. And so my first day working at this McDonald's, like 20-year-old man or whatever, 21-year-old man, you know, I make friends with all these young people there. And so all these young ladies are like, hey, you should come over tonight when we close and watch movies with us. Now, they have no idea who they're inviting over to their house. Well, it was Rodney Abraham's daughter, Bethany Abraham. Crazy, man. Bethany get herself killed, someone else, man. But like, just crazy. But invite me over to the house, man. Here I am in their basement. I meet Mr. Abraham for the first time, a lost man. I got a job on the turnpike. These girls take me to their house in their basement in the middle of the night. He gets home because he traveled. He gets home at 2 a.m. Here's this crazy dude in his basement with all these girls. And so I built this friendship, you know, with all these ladies and people from work and stuff. And so Bethany's sister Kelly worked with Casey, and they grew up together and were friends. And of course, they all kind of went to church together and things. And so I would go over and say, hey, you know, say what's up to Kelly, because we became friends too. So I would go over there, and Casey would see me, and Casey got an eye for me. And I didn't know that. I didn't know Casey liked me at the time, but Casey would, hey, Phil's here to see you and say hi. And, you know, so we met and met like that. And, you know, my life went another direction, and I ended up going to a different college and things, and ended up getting kicked out of there. And Casey moved out west for a while and came back, and God just had the perfect plan.
Now, when you say, you know, they're bringing over a crazy guy, I think you might have to paint a picture of how did you dress back then? You know, what was your mannerisms back then? Before you were saved?
I mean, I was kitted and fitted from head to toe, man. I mean, I matched everything. That's just how I like to live. Even if it wasn't fancy, it had to be, you know, I like to live nice. I like to dress nice, and, you know, my chains and I think I had diamond earrings. Even if I had to rent them sometimes, I'd go and rent earrings on the weekends, go to a party. I'd have big diamond earrings in my ears, and I don't know. There was a time I had a goofy big bull ring in my nose. I mean, I was wild. You name it. I was just wild, and I changed my style up all the time to, you know, keep them from keeping on me. You know, keep the deep looking, man. They can't catch me. I keep changing my look. That was actually part of it, but, you know, I did change my style a lot. But it was definitely, you know, I was in a lot of streetwear. You know, it's just how I dressed.
So that's why, you know, it's crazy to see you over there, you know.
Yeah.
Especially with church people.
Right.
You know.
And it's, you know, people invite you to their house in the middle of the night. You know, these girls are 18, you know, 19 years old, inviting some 20, 21-year-old guy to their house and things. Just a strange situation.
Then how the relationship between you and Casey, you know, after she came back, what happened?
Well, Casey, of course, grew up in a good church using the Bible, and she thought she knew better than her parents as she got a little bit older and moved out of home and got some of her own independence and bumped her head some. And she moved to the area where I had moved back to. I had actually moved back in with my mom, got kicked out of Cal U, threatened, told to go home where I was going to be doing some big boy time. So I came back. I said, my college career's over now. We'll just wipe our hands of that. We done. And so moved back, and she had moved into the same town, in the same city where I was living. And of course, I was known as the big party guy in high school and stuff. We had big, hundreds of people come out and have bands and different things, and people perform, and I did music and things. And so I was known for being able to have a good time. Unfortunately, I was the good time guy, and she moved into town, was away from her parents and away from God, and living with some people she shouldn't have been, and decided, hey, I know where the party guy's at. And she contacted me and came over one night, and we were all sitting, hanging on the front porch, and I think since then we've been together basically since then.
So you're together, and then of course at some point she does get you to church. How does that all work out?
Well, we were just, she's in a rebellious stage, and I'm just wild, kind of out of my mind, and trying to figure out life. And we just decided we love each other. We're just gonna have kids. So we have 2 children. And, of course, there's a lot that comes with that. You don't think about that as a young person, all the responsibility and stress and pain and heartache and all that comes with that. And so I had, of course, was in that trying to turn over a new leaf stage. And we have kids now, and I think we moved in with my mom for a while, and then we moved in with her parents for a while, her mom for a while. And I was trying to get on my feet and trying to work little jobs here and there, and got a job at the bank and stuff. And, I tried to clean up my look a little bit. And I took they had TV commercials back then. You could take all your jewelry in and get money for it. So I took my big old platinum chain and all my rings and put them in an envelope. And they gave me like $200. It was probably $20,000 worth of platinum jewelry. They gave me like $200. But I mean, I did. I tried. I thought, man, if I clean up my look, that's going to make me happy. I'd visited church a little bit. I thought, that's what these people got, man. They just clean up their look a little bit, and I can do this. I can do a little bit better.
Now, you did tell me before you were trying to turn over a new leaf, so you joined. Didn't you join a lodge or something?
I did, yeah.
Smoke cigars.
Yeah, I got rid of my Newport Light 100s, man. I thought that's back then. That was what we smoked in the streets. So you don't want to be known for smoking. That wasn't sophisticated smoking. Menthol cigarettes. So I listened to conservative radio. I thought, man, I got to find some rich white dudes to emulate my life after, and Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh, the AM radio or whatever. And so someone bought me a Glenn Beck book. I think I read maybe a chapter of it. I took it to work with me all the time to the bank. It went with me to the bank, and so I tried to get myself to be this person. Move on the other side of the tracks person, and we tried to change the music up. I told Casey, I said, man, we can't be, we're not going to raise the kids on gangster rap anymore. We need to pray about what we're going to raise these kids on. And it's just crazy. I think my solution was reggae music. I think that's what my lost brain. I came to the decision we're going to raise our kids on reggae music. Yeah.
So you're still trying to change, turn over a new leaf. Really, it's just the outside.
Yeah.
And how do you get saved?
Of course, Casey had known that obviously that's what I needed. I needed to get saved, and struggling with alcoholism and PTSD and all those different things that come with some of the stuff I had been involved with, and the mood swings and all that stuff. And so, of course, Casey's seeing things she'd never experienced in her life before. The way the transgressor is hard, and it is, and she found that out. And you can try to, maintain a certain look and a certain thing for so long, but eventually that facade's going to crack and break, and it's just not going to hold up. And it wasn't long. We were living in Greensburg and had a house and things, and trying to live a normal life, what I thought was a normal life, working job and stuff like that, and drinking every night, and it just led back to the wrong things. I wasn't satisfied. I didn't have the peace that I thought it would give me. I thought, man, if I change what I smoke, pull my pants up just a little bit, get rid of some of them chains and clean up my hair a little bit and all that, and not cuss and talk the way I used to, and clean up just a little bit, man, maybe I'll find some peace and happiness. And I didn't, and it was miserable. And she had witnessed to me, and she said she tried to let me watch some Christian videos and things, but I was really hardened and deadened to it. But I had started to just give up and go back to the streets. And she had walked in on me discussing products and things, and it really shook her hard that I was going back to that lifestyle. And I think it shook me too. I saw the look in her eye, just how scared she was. And thank God had old school buddy there, kicked him out, and he wasn't the best Christian in the world either. He's there, we're drinking every night together, but he was smart enough to know, we don't need this kind of person. Phil doesn't need this kind of person in his life to even drag him down even deeper, and I'm thankful for that. And Wes kicked him out of there, man. He said, "Get out of here." He's trying to change his life. And then I realized, man, I'm spiraling back to what I used to be. I'm gonna be back to slanging drugs, and it's gonna be people dying, and it's gonna be the multiple lives again, and trying to balance all this stuff, and it really started to break me. And so I agreed to a meeting. I had visited church a few times off and on, and it wasn't my thing. I kind of had my fleshly excuses, and so I agreed to a meeting on June 15th, 2008. I agreed to meet with the preacher that evening, Sunday evening, after the service. And so that's what we did.
So what took place in the meeting? What was this meeting about? How did she present this meeting?
There were a few times where Casey could kind of, she doesn't like I say that, but it wasn't threatening, but she was a little bit coercive early, trying to get me to church. I know why. I know her burden. I understand that, and she did. She tried really hard to persuade me to church, and you have to go. I can't. I can't stay in a relationship like this, and so I'd visit a little bit here and there, and I had just realized it was a point where I something had to change. And I needed to go to this meeting, but I didn't think I was as bad as she thought I was. I was now a conservative. I mean, look, I don't smoke cigarettes. I don't cuss like I used to. I sit up straight now. I could change how I talk a little bit, and speak a little clearer, and so I thought that I was being set up. I knew I was being set up. I didn't realize it was with the gospel. I thought, they're going to reason with me on, something else. I need to quit drinking or something. These little things. They want to change these little things. It wasn't my life that needed to change. It wasn't that I needed the Lord. And so I had reasoned with myself somehow in my mind that he was going to try to use the Bible, and so I had to have some kind of reasoning. And so I had watched the History Channel special on the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I watched it twice. I think it was on twice in a row that day on History Channel. You couldn't watch things on demand back then, and I thought I was prepared to go in there, and until the Bible was opened, of course. And I skipped church that morning. I didn't even go that night, but I did go to the meeting. I showed up right after church, and he ushered us into the office there and shook our hands, and we sat down, and he asked me what I thought about myself. He said, do you consider yourself a bad person? I said, I'm not the greatest person in the world, I guess, but I don't think I'm, the worst person either. And so he, let me talk a little bit and let me run a little bit of circles. Then he opened up the Bible and began to show me, for all have sinned to come short of the glory of God. And I'm not going to argue that. There's nothing to argue. There's nothing logically to argue that. I don't have any. I can't argue with that. That's true. We're all sinners. And he went and explained to me there's a penalty for it. For the wages of sin is death. And I couldn't argue with that. I knew there was something. We'd have parties, and there'd be times there'd be hundreds of people. I remember we had a party one time. They built a platform, and we had different people performing things. And a young man got up, and he got his little harmonica and was just being goofy, and he sang this funny song, just trying to honor me for having this big party. I went in my mom's house to use the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror, and I just hated myself so bad. Here you have all these people, you have all these friends, you have all the women and alcohol and anything you can think in this world. Anything in this world that a young man could want. And you have it, and you're miserable. And I'd look in the mirror, and I'd look at my face, I'd look in my eyes. I just say, why? Why am I here?
say, God, if you're real, someone has to do something. Satan, if you're real, someone has to do something. And I look at my face. I just look at my face. I didn't understand. Why is life like this? Why does it have to be like this? And then I put my faith and trust in Jesus Christ on that night. And he changed me. I knew I was a sinner. I may not have had the Bible verses. I may not know what the penalty was, but I knew I was a sinner. I knew I was on my way to hell. I'm sure I'd heard the gospel. I know Casey had preached it to me and told it to me and had me watch Christian videos. And I was ashamed. I'd laughed and drank through them, and it never pierced that heart. I sat on the edge of that seat. And he prayed. He said, I want you to think about this stuff. He was just going to let me get up and walk away. I mean, I'm a pretty nasty dude. You know, I might punch him in the head. He doesn't know what I'm going to do. I might have a gun. I mean, I was not the most stable person in the world. He knew that. He knew some of my background. And so he wasn't going to push me real hard. He was a pushy guy, but he wasn't going to push me hard on that day. And he said, let's pray. I want you to think about these things. And he did. He prayed. We bowed our heads and we prayed. And Case sat there and I sat here and he was across on the table. And I picked my head up and I didn't see anything, but it just felt like if I got up off that chair, I'm going to die and go to hell. I thought, this is it. You have to right now. This is it. I don't know what would have happened or could have happened. It could have been nothing. I don't know. But it just felt like God was saying, now you have to do it right now. Now's your chance. And I looked across that table. I said, hey, you think I can get that settled right now? And he kind of chuckled, shocked. I mean, shocked. Just shocked. Yeah, I think we can do that right now. Kind of chuckled. And I prayed. I don't remember the exact words that I said, but I got up out of that chair and walked out. And there was my father-in-law. He's now in glory. He's on his knees praying. And my mother-in-law sitting on the other end. And little Matea, she's just a toddler running between them. He's blocking her on that end praying. And she's sitting there holding baby Andre. And, he got up. He said, hey, you want to go get some dessert? And I don't like being around people, and I sure didn't like to talk to people and want to go in a car and go get something to eat. But I said, yeah, let's go do that. We got in the car, and it was just Clyde and I. He had those windows cracked. And man, that breeze hit me. I was 26 years old. It was the first time I really felt air. First time I saw trees, I saw color. That born-again spirit had all that I had looked for. You know, I used to look in the mirror. It was like I was looking at myself for peace. I don't know what I was looking for. But God had exactly what I needed. I'm so thankful. So thankful he changed me.
So after that change, though, you know, you kind of get on fire, right? Pretty much right away. You know, you.
Yeah, I found out them crazy people went out knocking doors, man, Thursday nights. They went out telling people about the Lord. I'm like, let's go do it. You know, part of me was like, I was excited, man. I want to do this, man. I want someone else to know what I got. You know, it'd be a pretty selfish thing, you know, get something good and not share it with no one, man. It's just nasty, man. You know, just not how I worked. You know, it wasn't how my philosophy in life, and I was a little bit mad that, you know, no one ever told me that before. And, you know, all these people around here, who's going to tell them? You know, how many of them grew up in a home, you know, and no one ever preached the gospel? How many of them never had this opportunity? And so I got to go out and bump my head off the pews a little bit here and there, and like a little toddler running around, and make some mistakes, soul winning and stuff. But it was fun. God's good.
If I'm correct, I don't. From what others have told me, that your first time going out, you had kind of like baggy pants on, kind of still a little bit rough on around the edges.
Yeah, I was pretty rough. Yeah, yeah. I thought if the outfit matched, it was if a collared shirt, so I'd wear a polo, and then I'd have big baggy like chino shorts, like plaid chino shorts, and like bright blue baby blue pants, baby blue polo shirt, and just not as big a chain. Now I was more. Yeah, I went they let me go while I was a little bit wild looking, but I was thankful to be a silent partner and be able to go out and go and see that and be a part of it. And of course, we didn't see anyone saved the first time I went, but we got to give some tracks out and things, and I was excited. And I looked over and I was with the preacher's son. And I said, hey, I got a great idea, man. I said, I remember all these clubs. I've always been that guy, man. I want to do more. I always want to do more. It didn't matter if it was bad or good. I just always want to do something more. Why sit here? Let's go do something, And so I said, all them old guys, all them old cats smoke cigars. They got this little piece of paper across the top. I think we can get the gospel on that. And man, I'm gonna hand them things out. And you should have seen the preacher's son's face. He looked like he'd seen a ghost, man. I think you need to talk to the preacher about that one. But I was just looking for some way to get it out there, man. Just excited to do something for God.
So from there, though, how long was it till God really called you to preach? How many years or months, or how long was it?
Casey and we went to the Justice of the Peace right after I got saved. June 23rd, we went, and we just, and we're living together. Let's just go get this right. And then she, of course, wanted to have a wedding, so we thought that November, it's a good opportunity to try to get as many of our old friends and things together as we can to have a wedding. She'll be able to walk the aisle. We can have the gospel presented. So we did marriage counseling with Casey's, with Clyde's brother, with her uncle Turtle, who was a missionary in Papua New Guinea. And so he did his normal, even though we were already married legally, he wanted to still do those things because he just thought that, this would be right for us to do. And so we had our first meeting, and he took us in, and he said, you're going to be the man of the home. And he started to explain to me, you're going to have to be able to teach your family the Bible. He said, when you come back for our next meeting, I want you to have something down that God showed you from Psalm 1 through 3. And that's what started it. I got in the Bible for the first time, and I got something out of there, and I saw it, and I went, God can use me. God can do something with me. I still have old notebooks somewhere, old little messages I'd write for my family and write for myself, little sermons and things. And, the preacher asked me, I don't know, it was 8-9 months. I mean, God I was just drinking in doctrine, man. I just took this book. He just said, let God be true and every man a liar. He said, you just take this book. Doesn't matter who says it. Doesn't matter what they look like, how much money they got, how fancy their education is. You just filter it through this book. And that's what I did. I just took this thing and just started living it and loving it and using it, and God really started to change my life and my thought pattern, and working with people and winning people to the Lord. And it wasn't long before preacher got the great idea that, I think he's ready to teach a class now. I had enough of it in me. Now it's time to start letting some of it, let people get the benefit of the overflow. And so he called me in, and, me being a younger believer, you look around, you get saved 26 years old, and you see people's baloney, man. You see people's fake stuff, man. Some of y'all in church, you know how it is. We know each other, and you get saved older in life, when people aren't really living it. And, you smell Mr. So-and-so smells like, cigarette smoke, and Mrs. So-and-so got her purse full of scratch-off tickets. You see it every time she opens it. And, you see those things. I thought, oh, man, he's going to have me preach to all these, we call them seasoned saints now, but all these old folks, man, I'm going to get them. I've been watching these people for 8 months now, watching them not doing right. All these things I know they're supposed to be doing this, I was a little bit pharisaical, baby Christian, I thought, man, I'm going to get them. I said, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to teach some Sunday school class, And he said, yeah, there's a classroom, down at the bottom of the stairs, that little class. I said, oh, yeah, the pantry room. We got a little. I said, yeah, you need something down there. He said, what I want you to do is I want you to clear that room out. You're going to put about 10, 15 chairs down there. and then you're going to build yourself a Sunday school classroom. He said, 1st through 3rd grade boys. I said, we don't have any 1st through 3rd grade boys. I was just starting to work on the bus routes a little bit. We were just getting bus routes going, and so I was in the training for that. We don't have any kids. We don't have any boys that age, and so I had to learn to build a bus route. I had to go out and build a Sunday school classroom and go out and get kids and work with them and keep in contact with them and their parents throughout the week and do those things and do that kind of ministry stuff. And so it was pretty awesome to see God do that. God used me in that way. And so that was exciting. That was the beginning of it. And it was about a year after I was saved. It was July 2009. And some things that happened in church, and you know how it is. People come and go, and different things, and circumstances change. And I was out cutting grass in my yard one day, living in the city, just a little plot, probably as big as this room. And I was listening to a message out of Luke 16. He was preaching on hell, preaching on that rich man Lazarus, and how family members down there were crying out. And I got to thinking, I was pushing that mower, that there's people around here. There's neighbors around here. We moved into that house on Pittsburgh Street, man. That lady came out next door on her porch, and she said, I knew someone was moving into this house. They just cleaned all the brains and blood off the apartment 2 days ago. I knew someone was going to move in here. I'm thinking, Lord, what are we getting? But that's the neighborhood I was living in. I thought, these people got relatives that are dead in hell right now, and they're crying out for someone to reach them, and who's going to do it? Why couldn't it be me? And I let go of the push mower. We had a little tree in the yard there. I said, God, whatever you want. I don't care. I know I'm nothing. I know I got a messed up head. I got a messed up body. But whatever you want, I'll do it. I got a call that night. The young man that was running the bus routes there, and he ran the soul winning on Thursday nights. He'd been working some overtime, and there were some things going on in his life. And he said, hey, you think you could preach the soul winning charge tonight and send people out, get the map out and send people out the streets? And I thought, whew, look at that, God's answering prayer already. And I probably preached 25, 30 minutes. I was supposed to give a 10-minute, 15-minute charge, send people out Thursday night to go knock doors and stuff, you know. And man, I was just fired up. And so I knew God was using me, and I just saw how He just opened doors and the opportunities, and just watching what He does. It's just amazing.
You know, the specific time when really God laid it on your heart to be called to preach, or was it that time?
I think that was the time when I was really called to preach. I think evangelism, more the pull for a lot of what I do now. My heart for things is Dr. Coral was preaching up in Johnstown, and he came to our church where I got saved at. And so, of course, I've never traveled. I hear all these old timers say, you know, they take their families and they go to revival meetings and things. Now, of course, I got friends, and we do it too. We got family members that travel to meetings, and you know, and so back then, you know, I'm thinking, man, I want to do that. You know, that sounds kind of cool. So we go to Johnstown, and here at the church plant, and I didn't know what that was either. I had no idea. You know, I didn't know, you know, traveling to a meeting, and then it's a church plant, it's a revival there, and so that was interesting. And so we went up there, and God opened my eyes to some different ministry opportunities, and we spent time up there doing traveling VBSs and the projects. You know, they have Section 8 housing up there is humongous, and people take the Amtrak. They run from the gangs in Philly and things, and look for a better life in the mountains of Johnstown, and so you have a lot of, and obviously there's a lot of elderly people and things there too, and a lot of, you know, it's a very poor place, needs needs the gospel, a lot of help, and so there was a lot of opportunity there to go to these community centers and these Section 8 housing and preach the gospel and be able to have fun, sing bus songs, almost have, you know, just do micro VBSs. And so God really used us doing that. And I watched adults walk an aisle while I'm preaching to little kids. I mean, I'm giving silly little Bible stories and watching gangsters walk the aisle and get saved. And I just knew that's what God wanted me to do. And we just prayed. I didn't want to be a used car salesman, and so I worked, and I stayed in my local church, and you know, meetings are really, really slow for a lot of years. You know, 5, 6, 7 years, really, really slow of just, God, you got to set my path. I'm going to trust you for this, you know, and that's what we've tried to do. just trust the Lord in it. And so it was cool to see him use me in that way. But those little things, he opens those little doors and gives you those, those little steps, that light, that lamp to our feet. We want that spotlight for the future, but he gives us a lamp to our feet. And sometimes it's in all those little steps that he was showing me. I'll show you I can use you. I'll show you you can read my word and study it, and growing me in those areas and allowing me to have peace about some of it too.
I think we moved to the area and coming to the church around 2010 to 2011ish. I think right mid 2010, and that's where kind of started singing the choir, and you were in the choir with. I remember that, and then. So there's about 15 years of my life involved with Phil, and he's had a huge impact in my life, especially after my mom passed away. We started working out together, and that was that's what I needed.
Bible and workouts, amen.
Yeah, and he saw through some of the stuff I was doing. He knew the stuff I was trying to hide, and he would point it out. And it was what I needed, and being able to go to meetings with him, he would preach out, and we would travel with him. We were, I guess, his preacher boys. Whatever he needed, we were there to help him. And so that in that area, I know, and that's why I wanted to do this interview with him, because he's been, God used him and used him in my life, and but. From there, I guess, since you've been called to preach, called to be evangelist, to now, what kind of has transpired? I know that's a big jump. That's about 15 years.
I think about the time you all came. I don't know if I had become. I think maybe I was bus director then.
Yeah, you were.
And I had just stepped up from being a normal bus worker and build bus routes and things. So I had taken on some more mature roles. I think I just started working in the Christian school, and so I was 3.5, 4 years, in the growing and things. And so it's still pretty rough. Even then, I was still pretty rough around that in just a lot of areas. And so I was at a place where, man, if it needed done at church, I was just going to do it, man. If it was like, Butch wouldn't trust me to change the light bulbs, but I'd hold the ladder for him. You know what I mean? Like if it needed done, I'd usher and count and just, you name it, I'm going to do it. I want to be there and be a part of it and do it. And this is what I'm supposed to do. And so I wanted to know all that God had and what he had for me and how it could be a blessing. And so it started there, I'd lost my job at the bank, and then of course I had to open doors up to work full-time Christian service. And I had gone through the transition of being lost at the bank and getting saved while working there. And so dealing with the struggles of, man, I got coworkers that when they first met me, they heard me talk about drinking and stuff, and now I got to work once a month up in IUP, and these guys after work, they're all going out partying and stuff, and I got a wife and kids at home, man. I can't be messing with this stuff, and so I when I go out and preach, I understand people have to work out in the Lord full-time job. My heart goes out to you. I understand the pressure of that, and I just knew it wasn't where I wanted to be forever, and I knew God had something else for me, and so I was thankful for that, to be able to get in the full-time Christian service, 6-7 years in, and work in the Christian school, and then start to travel some, working bus routes, and I didn't want to give up. I didn't want to give up being a bus director. I think I was traveling evangelism for quite a few years, and then probably about 6-7 years in, just you get too busy. You just can't. You can't make the hospital calls when a kid, has an issue or something like that. You're just not there anymore. And so we started to travel out a little bit more, and what was 2019 is when God moved us to Ohio. I'm not going too fast, am I?
No. A little bit about maybe your time. We got to go to football camp. A little bit. To me, football camp played a big role in my life, just because that's where God called me to preach, and the things that led up to there. What was your experience? I know, you've gone to that for many years. Where
I was at working up at Shooters Expo, and I got an opportunity to work with Brother Dan. We were marshaling
a course up there together, and he was talking to me about me. And of course, I had played football, a lot of 12 years growing up, and so I liked football. And now as a Christian, I see a lot as men, especially as we start to get older, we see potential in younger people, and not always. Sometimes we can become very cynical and become jealous. We can be Sauls a lot, especially when we become self-imaged. But as we get older, a lot of times, and I think I started to get to that stage in my 30s where I started to see, like, man, I want to help other people. I want to help younger people. I think that'd be an encouragement. And so, of course, I want to see it and be a part of it. And I liked football growing up, and so it was really cool to meet Pastor Woodward and get plugged in and be a part of it and go out that first year. And yeah, it was quite the experience to go out and see. Just a different format of things. And pretty rough at first. Physically, you're not ready for that kind of day. You don't think, you'll leave pretty sore the first couple days.
It's like, well, you get up 5 a.m. to go to bed at 12.
Yeah, and back then, Monday night with the draft and everything, I mean, you're lucky if you get in bed by 1. By the time you shower, then you're back up at 5. And then Tuesday, you're playing a game on Tuesday, so you're up, getting all these kids in gear. If you get 1 or 2 kids that played public school ball or knows anything about football, you're lucky. So a lot of work.
Yeah. So around 2019, 2020, you moved out from this area to Ohio then?
Yeah, we moved out to Akron, Ohio, and God's been good to us out there. We were able to travel in evangelism, help out there, and fill in the gap for a while. And so it's been good. It's been good. Still traveling, doing what we do. Probably about that time, I think I started to pick up a lot more Bible schools, and so June had kind of, for the past, oh man, I don't know, 6-7 years has kind of been nothing but Bible schools for us. But we've never fallen into a groove of just one thing. We just believe whatever God has for us. That's what we want to do and be available for. So.
Now, you told me that you're looking to move now.
Yeah, so we got to a place where our schedule, we still are, God keeps us as full, and so we spent a lot of years just going and things, and so that's good. But God changes situations of life and things, and health changes and those types of situations too, and so. You watch and wait, and of course we started to pray about 3 years ago. God slammed some doors with the police there in Akron, different things that we had a desire, that God gave us the desire to do and help, and things that we really can see Him working in, and in that area, it was just He slammed that door. And so you start to pray and say, okay, God, well, what do you want? What's your will? What's your way? And so we start to pray about those things. In evangelism, it's dangerous sometimes because you go to churches without pastors, and you go to sometimes nice churches with pastors, and they have a heart. They meet your family, and they would love to have, they're looking for a Timothy, and they should be. They should have that desire and be praying for that and training one up, and so you don't want that. You have to watch just telling everyone no. But you also have to say, okay, God, what do you want, God? Where do you want me? What do you want from me? And so you get you field those questions, and so it's just Casey and I pray, and God's always been real consistent. There's been some times in the past year even where we've had some close friends in the ministry ask us, hey, would you consider, would you pray about God? And where Casey and I were in tears, where she looked at me and she said, I feel guilty that we're not supposed to be there. I said, but you can't, honey. It's not God's will if you don't feel like we should be there. And she said, I'm so happy you said that. She's like, I was feeling so guilty inside. I love them. I don't want them. I'm like, it's not. We want God's will, and that's all we want. We just want God's will for things. And so God has. Obviously from early in my ministry, we've worked and encouraged church planners and working with churches without pastors and doing encouragement meetings and things.
And so opportunity has come up where God's kind of knit our heart with Pastor Creed down there, and met him a few years ago, and God just again and again, door after door after door, has opened us up for us to be able to move down to that area, to relocate, move our ministry down there, and be out of his church, and hopefully see some churches planted, continue to do a lot of what we're doing now. Of course, getting a little bit older, not a lot older, a little bit older, and so some health issues and things. You got to slow down a little bit. I was to a point where I wasn't home at all more than 1 or 2 Sundays a year, and sometimes that's not good. I need preaching too, and not that I wasn't at meetings where I wasn't getting preaching and things, but sometimes you need that little bit of slow down and adjustment, and God has us at that place where He's starting to do that a little bit in our life. And not that we're slowing down and quitting. We're slowing down and speeding up in a different way.
Yeah. So that's happening this year sometime that you're gonna.
Yeah, Lord willing, hopefully by the end of the year we'll be able to get adjusted and get down there, and we would like to start a Bible study, a Thursday night Bible study, and Lord willing, get a church started before too long, and see what God does.
All right, awesome. Maybe you can tell us some soul winning stories, some crazy soul winning stories. I'm sure you have some.
Oh man, crazy good, crazy bad,
either or.
One on my heart, just because recently I just got back from the Dominican a couple weeks ago. We're over there, and my translator, his father-in-law died. He found out in church service. I started teaching Wednesday night, I think Friday night. So he looks over, and Pastor Creed taught first, and then I closed us out. And so he looks over, and we're sitting there, and he said, "I just got a text. My father-in-law died." And so he's, this man's crying, and so I said, "Well, you need to go, man." And so he stayed that night, and he stayed, and he translated for us, and man, God bless the service and everything. So then Saturday's the next day, and of course he's going to be with his family, and I don't blame him. Well, now I don't have a translator for bus visiting and soul winning and all that, and so a pastor Seidler, his health, a missionary over there, longtime missionary over there, decades and decades over there, his health is getting bad, and so he just physically he cannot be walking the streets and translating and things, and so he translated for the morning bus charge, the soul winning charge. I was able to preach that, and so he helped that, and then Brother Stephen Wesson, his parents missionaries over there, of course, in Dominican, and he came over with us, flew over with us from college to be a translator and to help, and so him and Pastor Creed, they were going to do the bus routes there in Quitasueña, in that little part of town there. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go soul winning too. And so I jump in the van full of these families, and everyone speaks Spanish. And I am just now learning Spanish. I don't speak no Spanish, man. I'm 44 years old, and so this is what God has for us. We're going to go do it, God blessed me to learn some phrases and be able to connect with the people there a little bit. And, I understand Dominican, they talk like I do. They drop all the hard endings off everything, man. If it's a hard consonant, man, they just drop it. So that's easy for me. That's how I speak anyways. And so I, get over there, and we get out in this part of village, and it's extremely, extremely poor. It's dirt, and you got mud conchos everywhere. And so I'm a kind of a roamer, a squirrel guy, and so the men have to keep pushing me out. Well, march, Brother Phil, and there's the motorcycles, because they don't care. They'll just kill you. They'll just run you over. And so I roam around, Dios la bendiga. I'm handing out gospel tracts everywhere, just like a nut, And so we get down this one alley, and now we're handing out gospel tracts, and we split a little bit, and it's a couple of us, and a young man comes out of a house in the back, and they're all kind of laid out with a front stoop and an overhang, and it's just unique the way the village is laid out, and almost like southwestern PA, where it's like coal mining towns, where they put a street and then you got a back alley street, and then you got a sideways back alley street, and they're just built like that, like crazy. And so this young man comes, I hear English. And very, very strong Dominican, Caribbean, English. I said, yeah, English. And so out of the dark back, comes up through this house, Samuel comes out. And he says, intermediate English. I speak intermediate English. I said, you're coming with me. Come on, man. And I shook his hand.
and oh man, it's just awesome. Samuel, he went to the church there in Keeteswayne, the Baptist church there in Keeteswayne, as a young man, and got involved in the world. He's been away from God, and he's learning English to get a job. He wants to work a job where he can speak English, and so he's learning English for not the right reasons, obviously, but thank God he had him there. He had this young man there that could speak a little bit of English, and so I said, "Come on, man, you're going to come with me." And so he came with me, and we did a couple house calls and prayed with some people and things. And we came up the street, and on a lot of the street corners, you'll see the moto conchos. They're like their motorcycle Ubers, and they get on there with everything and anything. And I mean, it's not like how we ride motorcycles here. It's their everything mobiles, and you hop on and off and carry everything, and dogs, cats, and 4 or 5 kids, and you name it, man, they got it on there. And so we come up the street in this corner, and I see 3 young men there on those bikes, and they got nicer bikes. The one man, I can see shiny platinum teeth, and I see some chains. And the one guy, he's back a little bit more, and I see tattoos. And most people over there can't afford those kind of things, and they say, especially young people over there. So I'm thinking, okay, these guys, they got nicer bikes, they got nice jewelry and things. These guys probably doing some things they shouldn't be doing. And so I said, come on, man, we're gonna talk to these guys. And so we go over there, and Samuel's translating, and I'm talking to them and telling them about the meeting, and so I'm looking at them and talking and looking at Samuel, and so they start, oh yeah, we'll come to church sometime. Give me one. Yeah, I'll come to church sometime, just like in America, just like folks do. And so I said through my translator, I said, listen, people go to church all the time, die and go to hell. And Samuel tells them that, and they look at me stunned, like. I'm sure that excuse has worked on every religion that's come through the neighborhood. They say, oh, yeah, we'll be there tonight, and then they never satisfies them, I said, I don't care if you come at all. It doesn't matter. I said, what I care about is your soul. And I began to give them some of my testimony through the translator and things, and in their eye, you just watch their eyes. And I talked to them about some of the death and destruction, things that I'd seen in life, and I asked them their ages, and the young man sitting here, he said he was 26. And I got a little bit closer to him, and I said, I was your age when I got saved. I said, you need to trust Christ. Don't die and go to a devil's hell. That's not where God wants for you. And man, these boys' eyes were big. These young men's eyes were big. And I said, do y'all want to pray and get that settled? And they all nod their heads. And I said, y'all come here. We got to pray. And so the other 2 get off their bikes, and they come over. And I could tell something's a little bit off. I'm thinking, man, what's going on here? And so they talked to Samuel, and he said, this is a bad area. They're not going to bow their heads and pray unless someone's watching their backs. And I said, well, can you translate? Will they let you watch their backs while we pray? And so they said, yeah, they'd agree to that. And so I said, well, I'm going to pray a prayer like I did when I got saved. I said, but it's not the words that save you, of course. It's what you do with Jesus Christ, what he's done for you, and putting your faith and trust in him. And man, them boys bowed their heads, closed their eyes. They didn't come to church, while I was there or anything. I don't know if they ever will, but man, it's just so awesome to watch young men across the country don't even speak the same language. That 26-year-old man on that bike, I could just see the hopelessness in his eyes. He just had I wouldn't be surprised if when he goes home before he got saved that there weren't times that he looked at his own face. He just had that hopeless look that I would hurt anyone, I would do anything just to feel anything. He just looked like he was just dead inside. And thank God by the time we left there, man, they had the gospel. They had the Lord. Amen. This is so awesome.
Maybe one more, and then we'll see if you have some advice for maybe three different groups of people.
Okay. Well, I think another really crazy, exciting salvation. We were doing Intercity Teen Conference in Frederick for Pastor Fry. And a bad storm comes through. I think it's Sunday night. And on Sunday, my buddy Todd and I, Todd and I, we rotate Sunday. During the nights, we both preach. And then Sunday, one of us preaches Sunday school, one Sunday morning. So every year we switch. And so I was up Sunday night. Well, a big storm had come through. So we got back to our hotel. It was near COVID, so they didn't have old age homes and things in the afternoon. So we got to go back and take a nap in the afternoon. And so we go back to our hotel there and take a nap. And bad storm blows through, limbs everywhere. I mean, knocks power out, flooding all through Frederick. Really, really, really bad. So we're like, oh man, this is crazy. And so we're make sure we're going to leave extra early for church. Only 15, 20 minutes down the road to the church from the Best Western or whatever, where that hotel is there. And so we go down and certain roads, you try to get down there and you can't go because there's limbs down and roads closed and wires. And so we get on that street where they're at, and how tight the parking there is tight, on both sides. And as we're coming down the street, there's a young man with no shoes on. He's on a longboard. I think that's what they're called, like a long skateboard. It's a skateboard, so it's long, and he's barefoot. Hair's a little bit longer. He's just in a t-shirt and short. And I mean, it's bad out. It's not raining now, but it's like just bad out. And the after effects of a really terrible storm Sunday night, like whatever, 5 o'clock Sunday night, it's kind of dim and grungy, and he's skateboarding barefoot through this nasty puddles and debris. And so we're like, man, that's weird. And I think we may have stopped and got some caffeine or something and just didn't pay. Oh, no, I know what we did. We stopped to get caffeine before we saw him. We pulled off, and we like to get a picture over under that bell tower thing across at the park there. And so Todd and I go over there, and we're getting pictures and think nothing of it. And so we come back, and at the time, the church there, Ambassador, was building their front entrance. And they didn't have tile or anything in that front area in the vestibule before you get into where the church was. It was just plain cement. And Todd and I, we cross the street and we get over to the church, and we start to see these footprints up the steps, across the cement, the whole way into the church. We go into the church, it's pitch black, there's no lights on, there's people in there, Pastor Fry lays at the piano, everything's, and the power's out. And I'm looking, and there about the third row, there's that guy, and he's sitting with 2 other people. We go up and say hi, and I don't push real hard and getting ready to preach and figure out what's going on and talk to them and try to be nice to them. And I don't know their situation. And of course, I get up, and I think I preached by flashlight that night, and I didn't preach real long or anything. And that man raised his hand for salvation. And so Todd gets up and takes him over in the other side room. The church there has a little side area, and Todd takes him over there, and I'm doing the altar call, and people are praying and things, and Todd starts waving like this, come here. And so Pastor Fry takes the altar call, and so I go over, and he wants to talk to you. And so I start talking to him, and tells me I won't go into the details of it, but he had escaped. He had claimed that he was and I don't doubt it, that he was sex trafficked by a huge religious organization in Baltimore. As a young man, stolen from somewhere in the South, a couple states south, I don't remember if he said Virginia or where, but they had abducted him, and he's been drugged and his body abused by this religious organization in Baltimore for years, and he just escaped. And he gets saved, and just powerful to watch what God does, and just that whole situation of how we could have turned him away or been unkind, and he came to church, and find out the 2 people he was with, the girl that brought him, she's actually a homeless girl who brings in other homeless people in the church occasionally on a lot of times on Sunday nights. And she had just happened to run into him on the streets and said, I know a place where you can go. And because some homeless girl knew the Lord and was faithful to point other people to the Lord, I was able to help lead him to the Lord. I don't know what happened to him afterwards, but it was just unbelievable how God puts people, circumstances, and situations together like that.
Amen. I'm sure there's like endless stories of soul winning stories we can go through.
Yeah,
I like them. Maybe to kind of like wrap things up, some advice you would give to just just a layman in the church, or just someone that just goes to church. What kind of advice would you give them? They're not called to preach. They're not, they're just
be found faithful. Just be faithful. Be faithful. Be forgiving. I think probably what we're struggling with in our churches nowadays more than anything are faithful men, and men that get things right. They're Matthew 18 men. There's a lot I could say, but we have failed going to each other when there's misunderstandings. We failed being in our places, and a lot of times we fail being in our places because we don't correct misunderstandings because we're afraid of a conflict. A lot of times, it's not a conflict; it's just a misunderstanding. And if we'll faithfully, hey, listen, I don't understand what you're saying, and properly communicate with people, and faithfulness in every area, obviously, but
But if we would learn to just be faithful, not worry about being a big shot or what the title is, and just being found faithful and in our place and right where God wants us, and doing it, and being satisfied that this is where God wants me. If someone wants to be a big shot, let them be a big shot. The big shots come and go. Honestly, they do. There'll be people come to church and they got fancy money and they got fancy speech and they got fancy skills, and a lot of times, sadly, they come and go. But just be found faithful.
What about some advice for someone that just got called to preach? They're just getting into the ministry. What about that? A little bit of advice for them.
Jesus said, "My sheep know my voice. Feed them sheep food. Feed the flock. Use this." Look, I like jokes, and I tell stories, and I tell illustrations, and I like putting stuff on the bottom shelf. I really do. I use my life, my family, my kids. I apply God to everything. But it has to be in context to this, understanding the context, proper application, not just taking a little verse and just willy-nilly throwing it around. Just use the word. God's good, man. You don't have to be fancy. You don't need a fancy suit. Just be faithful to feed the sheep. Get in here and eat yourself. Get a good appetite for it, and don't worry about the goats and everyone else. And man, just get in there, and God will use you. Don't worry about being a big shot on a platform. So that's the cherry on top. Preaching on Sunday or preaching in revival, that's just the cherry on top. You don't get there to that, and the people that get there and flop are the ones that didn't do the work the whole rest of the time for when their time is called. Sometimes people are called up on a platform don't deserve to be there, probably shouldn't be there. But don't worry about that. It doesn't matter. We just need to be faithful to this book and doing what's right, regardless of what anyone else does around us. And just fall in love with the Word of God and just get comfortable using it. So I'd say, just get comfortable. Just get a good appetite for it. Get a good healthy diet of it.
And then someone in the ministry around your age, or going to be your age, what advice can you tell them now?
I would say, being saved 17 years, 13 years now, full-time evangelism, don't be an island. That local church connection, not just to, obviously your local church pastor, but that multitude of counselors. The Bible says our purposes are disappointments without counsel, Proverbs tells us. And a lot of times we get older in the ministry, and pastors, evangelists, doesn't matter. We start to think that just because I got years behind me, we start to look at statistics of years behind me versus what God's doing. And God's still the same, and I need healthy checkups, and I need relationships, and maintaining proper relationships, and not isolating ourselves, because it's very easy to as we get older. Because you get older and you realize, oh yeah, a lot of them old friends were more just acquaintances. Oh yeah, some of those people we were just friendly because we were coworkers at work or whatever. We were friends of, we occupied the same space, and as you get older, you realize that, I need to be a good friend, and I need to, pick my friends wisely. And
yeah, I think that's about it.
Amen.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, man. Love you, man.
Love you too, man.